Welcome to Conversations in Physical Therapy Research. Throughout this series, we'll be joined by physical therapy researchers and other voices in the PT community to talk about the role of research and how it helps shape the evidence base that supports the profession.
To kick things off, Stanley, can you tell me about your journey into physical therapy?
Well, firstly, I was at high school and I wasn't a particularly brilliant student, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated from high school, because in those days you went on to university and there was no four-year bachelor's degree. You went straight into medicine, dentistry, physical therapy, nursing, whatever you wanted. But my father was a physical therapist, and he seemed to have a good standard of living. He was well respected in the community. The patients, his office was on the front of the house. So I would often take my father a cup of tea in the afternoon when I came home from school, and the patients there said nice things about my father. I just drifted into physical therapy, and it helped that the School of Physiotherapy, as we called it in New Zealand, was in the same town in which we lived, and my father was on the selection committee, and that's how I got in.
What did physical therapy look like when you first entered the profession?
Oh, very different than now. It was very much a hands-on profession, and it wasn't very well informed. We learned from our teachers and a few textbooks. There was no research in those days. There was no scientific inquiry.
When you first started out in your career, did you ever imagine that you would be sitting in a room hearing about all this AI and all this future development?
Oh, no way. I remember on graduation day, our speaker got up at the physiotherapy school and said, "Now you know all there is to know about physiotherapy." And I'm looking at the speaker thinking, oh no, I've already seen things outside of this profession that need to be incorporated into it. And I've seen some clinicians doing things that they never learned at school. There's a whole broad swath of opportunity out there for our profession.
I think that's actually a really interesting point, because in your answer, I could already see that at a young age, coming right out into the profession, that you were already thinking about pushing those boundaries that you learned about in school.
Yes.
So have you always been like that? Have you always been wanting to go beyond what was being taught?
Yes. If I go into my sporting history, as a 12-year-old, I became a competitive swimmer. And I had a coach. And the coach was telling us what to do and how to swim. I'd ask questions. Coach didn't have the answers, just said, do this. I'd go to the library, and there were 3 books on swimming at the public library. And I noticed the cards that were in the book. They hadn't been borrowed in several years. I read the books. Then I came back with more questions. I couldn't get answers from my coach. I became a successful swimmer. I self-coached because I did my own research, because the resources, the coaches, didn't seem to have that knowledge.
And how many times did you swim the English Channel?
Well, I made 9 attempts and I succeeded twice. I had more failures in my life than successes.
Was there a moment in your career when you realized that physical therapy needed a stronger evidence base?
I think so, yes, because we were totally under the thumb of medicine. You could not see a patient unless the doctor did the diagnosis and prescribed the treatment. And when I came to America, I immigrated in 1966, it was pretty well the same way. I was on the faculty of Boston University, and I had a clinical position at Massachusetts General Hospital. We had very few PhDs, but we knew, and the likes of Charles Magistro, who helped to found this foundation, they knew that without research to strengthen what it was we were doing and to prove what we were doing was effective, we would never be able to get the measure of autonomy that we have gained today. We were totally under the thumb of medicine. How could we break away and become a respected profession? We had to do the research to prove our value.
In your view, how has research changed the physical therapy profession over your career?
Well, tremendously, because now we have self-confidence. We know that we are an effective profession, and that means we hold our head higher. The public has noticed, And today we are recognized by the public. Just 10 years ago, most members of the public did not know about our profession. They did not self-refer. They always went through a physician to come to us. Now, in many parts of the country, more than half the patients that a person sees in their practice are just direct referrals. People decide they want to come of their own volition because they've heard about physical therapy and they believe it to be an effective profession. I saw the gradual evolution of it. As we got better and better evidence for what we were doing, it validated some things we were doing. It changed some things that showed there was no evidence for some of the practices. And we started to realize that we needed more of this research, both to validate where we had effective care, but also to tell us what was not effective, that we thought was effective. And so I think as a profession, we suddenly overnight, perhaps, began to recognize its value to us. I saw the value initially as proving our worth to the outside world, to physicians. I saw it as a prestige thing, but then I started to see it as value to ourselves to help improving our practice.
Can you tell me about your timeline of manual therapy?
Well, it began with the experience of accidentally manipulating a patient on the gymnasium floor. I was supposed to instruct exercises, but I had manually helped this patient. That was on a Friday. I worried all weekend about what I might have done to that patient. On Monday, he didn't turn up for the class. 10 minutes later, he walks in, almost runs in, shakes my hand, thanks me for fixing his back. And I realized that what I had done was I had manipulated him. And on rare cases, manipulation can have a dramatic effect. And that was one such case. And I said to my father, what is this? My father being a physiotherapist. And he said, well, you manipulated the patient. I said, well, are we going to learn that? He says, no, that's chiropractic. And I said, but if it helped him, it should be in physical therapy. He said to me, if you want to study that and bring that into the profession, I'll support you financially for the studies you'll need to do overseas. So I came back to New Zealand after 2 years of study and travel. I mixed them both up for quite a while overseas. Came back, started instructing at the New Zealand School of Physiotherapy. My first article to be published was in the New Zealand Medical Journal explaining manipulation. I published a book, and then I realized that I didn't have a degree. We in New Zealand graduated with a diploma of physiotherapy. And so I knew I needed to come to America to get a PhD, and then I'd be able to come back home to New Zealand and maybe run the School of Physiotherapy and change the profession for the better by being the director of the school program. Well, the PhD studies took longer than I thought, and I had opposition to practicing manual and manipulative therapy. My university would not allow me to edit, write, publish, or in any way associate myself with manipulation until such time as it had been proven as an effective modality. So I went to work at Mass General Hospital, and I went into private practice. At Massachusetts General, they allowed me to manipulate. I got to speak. My private practice flourished. I started teaching seminars. And those seminars led to a certificate in manual and manipulative therapy. Became popular all around the country. That became my purpose in physical therapy, which I hope it's a broader purpose than that today. But that was my focus, and that's what I became specialized in.
You brought manual therapy to the United States.
Not really. Let me correct you. Our founder, Mary McMillan, talked about 4 aspects of physical therapy. And one was manipulation of soft tissue and joints. And if you look at the early journals of physical therapy, when I was preparing to do my McMillan lecture, I counted 23 articles on manipulation in the journals of physical therapy. Yet in the 1960s, we were not doing manipulation at all. It was no longer taught in the schools. Yet it was one of the founding 4 aspects of physical therapy, along with electrotherapy, hydrotherapy, and exercise therapy. It disappeared from practice. When I came back, I reintroduced it. And when I found those articles in our early journals at the library of the APTA, that helped make the case.
At what point in your career did you find yourself saying that you wanted to get into the educational aspect of physical therapy?
Well, I think all physical therapists are kind of educators because we are teaching our patients. We just don't treat them and send them home. We give them exercises. We teach them posture. We are teaching them all the time to improve themselves. And in that capacity, we ourselves should be an example of a healthy and productive lifestyle if we're going to impart those things to our patients. When I realized that I had skills in manual and manipulative therapy and orthopedics, and also in sports, I was the first ever physical therapist to an Olympic team. That was 1960 in Rome Olympics. When I realized I had these special talents, I taught seminars. But I also felt that these seminars I'm teaching are to graduate therapists. Much of what I'm teaching at the graduate level, giving just certificates of attendance, should be incorporated into the education of every therapist coming into the profession. And so I started a school with an emphasis on orthopedics, and I advertise it as such. Most schools of physical therapy don't say that they have an emphasis in geriatrics or pediatrics or neurology. We were the first to say, we're going to train you across the whole board of physical therapy so that you will be able to take your boards and practice. But our emphasis is on the musculoskeletal system, and in particular, manual and manipulative therapy. And that caught on very quickly.
What inspires you to continue supporting manual therapy research?
I think it's going to be more important in the future to have hands-on skills. Much of what we do today could be replaced by artificial intelligence working through a robot with the patient wearing sensors and the patient being monitored 24/7 by artificial intelligence, being advised and exercise programs being changed and so on. We're going to, as a profession, have to place more emphasis on the clinical presence, on the contact with the patient. And hands-on skills is something that I don't see artificial intelligence replacing. The ability to examine a patient with your hands, feel for what's right and what's not right in muscles and in joints, and do those corrective procedures. We have Zoom meetings today. Yet here we are face to face, and we can talk and look one another in the eye and converse at a high level of communication than we can with Zoom. I think the hands-on ability of our profession is what we will have to compete against AI. We should use AI. As someone said very well yesterday, a physical therapist could be replaced by AI. But a physical therapist with AI will replace a physical therapist without it. So I think we need to use the skills and the advances of AI. But that therapist with hands-on skills, I think the patients are going to appreciate that. As we get less touch with our patients, they're going to want it from our therapists. High tech, we can beat it with hands-on therapy.
You know, in your career, especially at University of St. Augustine, how did you train your students on how to really embrace that empathy and how to really work with their patients with that level of care?
Now, we set up core values. We had 9 core values. And the first one, students first. Students ahead of faculty, students ahead of staff. And if we show that to our students, that we listen to them and their concerns, and how we can improve our relationship with them, the student, they're going to learn that from us. And they're also going to hear that they have to treat the patient that way. And if we don't treat the student right, then the student is not going to treat the patient right either. So that was our core value, students first.
Makes sense. And it creates a servant mindset, leadership style.
Yeah. I pick up the paper on the playground that's on the ground. Now, I cleaned up things when I saw they needed doing.
Stanley, if somebody came up to you and said, why does physical therapy research matter? How would you respond?
Well, research never ends. new things, new ideas, new advances like AI will come along, and we must be prepared for that, and we must continue to research. I think, having said that, research papers that once written should not be lost. They should retain their value. But my main reason for continuing is there will be new ideas, there will be advances, there'll be new practices. I don't know what they are, but we must be prepared to investigate them. Every profession that is seeking payment from the public or from a government needs to justify that investment in capital is valid, that it's going to be providing for something that is necessary and needed. So we needed to prove that we actually could get good results from physical therapy, that we could help the stroke patient, that we could help the person with back pain. And in the case of back pain, we need to prove that in many cases we're more effective than the alternative of medicine or surgery. And we've done that. And so that validates us and enables us to continue our practice and receive the funding and the patient's support for what it is we do. Without research that compares and contrasts what we do with others and the cost of it, we wouldn't have validation for practice. And I think that's an emphasis that we've seen more of, and more of our research is being used to show our effectiveness as compared with alternatives. That's a recent trend in our research, which is a good one.
Stanley, we both serve as board trustees for the Foundation for Physical Therapy Research. How long have you been associated with the foundation?
Well, I guess about 15 years. I did 9 years on the foundation, and that's the limit, three-year terms. And then that was finished. And I missed it very much. I enjoyed my time on it, helping make decisions on the expenditure and the direction of the foundation, helping the profession to become aware of it and the value of the foundation to every member of our association. And so when my term ended, it was okay. I'd done my bit, and there I was. But then one day I got a call, would I come back on as an emeritus member? Without a vote, I might tell you. But there's a value, and I'd seen that with Charles Magistro. He came back as an emeritus member. There's a value of history, of being able to say, well, we've done that and it didn't work. Or years ago, someone suggested this. I think as a member of the foundation, I have responsibility to be current in what people are thinking, to think about the future of physical therapy. I'm no longer a clinician. I no longer teach. Next month, I'm 88. I'm fully retired, if you like. But I love this profession. I want to keep serving and supporting the Foundation of Physical Therapy Research. And I don't want to go into the woods or sit on the rocking chair. I want to stay involved till my last day.
Dr. Paris, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope that our viewers out there can take a lot about the future of physical therapy through the Foundation for Physical Therapy Research. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and I hope it encourages people to continue supporting our foundation. Thank you for your work.